That sucked. Well, luckily no one really watches my stream. It's anyways. Ha 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 ha. How depressing. Oh, I forgot to do something. Let's put this up just so we don't get in trouble with the copywriters. Because again, if you like this stuff, right, and if you like this comic book, right, and you want to go and buy it, right, I don't want to spoil it for you, that sort of thing, because I'm not going to really go through the whole thing. So we have here, of course, the inside, and we move on. Right. So we have this scene here that has no payoff because she asks Pamela about her lipstick and it's like, "Oh, I make it actually," and that sort of thing. And it makes sense that Pamela would want to make a cruelty-free, sustainable, eco-friendly, blah blah blah, and how she learned to make it. The internet. This part is a detailed thing, nitpicky. I'm not a big fan of it. It would make much more sense if her father was like some sort of chemist and she learned from him or something like that, or even then, right? I am eating potato chips. Ah. So we have her. I mean, this part is like all in par, right? And ooh, late for class, gotta go, right? Comes in and boom, right? Mm. Then some of you, like if you listened earlier, which I probably don't, or if you're gonna listen later on, it's like, oh look, this is playful panel. I have to say this almost seems a little bit wasted because you have so much white space, especially here. I mean, this. Uh, I am in the firm believer that whoever's writing for comic books, specifically Marvel and DC, they need to have a strong base in science fiction writing, more so being science literate, right? I mean, everyone who's been through a science class knows that you don't pour chemicals like how Pamela's doing this right here. You do not pour chemicals like this. This is not how you do it, right? Because it introduces inaccuracies, right? Oh, finished grading the test last week, perfect score, yada yada, this, that, and this kind of doesn't go anywhere, right? The college thing never becomes an issue, right? Dad right here comes off like a rapist, like he does this shoulder touch thing right here, and this right here, right? Creepy, to say at the very least, because Pamela's like a junior here, and then leading her down, and then this part here, like, ugh, creepy, right? Because it seems a lot worse than it is. And then right here, I'm not a big fan of this stuff right here. And one thing that this suffers from, mind you, this is like 180 some pages of stuff, and it feels like it's been rushed. And it would help so much if they structured this where it had those exposition text boxes, because then, they could focus on the scenes that they want to, right? But they don't. And so we have parts like this, and you know, this I have to say, overall, I mean, like it or hate it, you may or may not, but I have to say, overall, this book could have done with a lot more polishing, to say at the very least. And not only that, but this also gives a preview of what's it? I'm Not Startfire, and I have to say, let's take a quick preview of this, right? Now, mind you, you can go to the Mary Sue, I believe, and check out what it is, but here's what we get, right? Art style reminds me very much of Steven Universe, right? Like that game that they had, very much like this. Mentions of allusions to Shakespeare is always a good thing, but something like this tells me it's like, did they actually read Hamlet. Like, mind you, it's like I haven't read Hamlet, right? But this does not sound like how people would read Hamlet. Mind you, Hamlet is like a Quentin Tarantino film, right? So, you know, I mean, Mariko, if you're gonna make these illusions, at least make sure that they're like legit illusions with a proper representation, right, of whatever source material you're alluding to, right? Otherwise, it gives off the appearance that your characters, and in turn you, don't really know what you're talking about. Hamlet's like, oh, but my life is so hard. You need to give me all your emotional resources. It's like that. That does not sound like any summary of Hamlet that I know. But so right here, pizza, and then yeah, like apparently resentment between I don't even know what her name is. Claire. Have fun with. No, wait, that's not even her name. What is her name? Yeah, no, I don't get this. You're not going as your mom gonna be pissed. 2 days ago, this, like this opening, not exactly the best. I hope this isn't the opening to this because if you showed me this, right, this is definitely a very creative scene, to say at the very least. Clearly shows anxiety. It's great for that. And then we get to here. This, I have to say, the pencil is pretty distracting, right? Like if they showed the pencil and minimal movement lines, but all these extra circles, I think it's too much. Well, I get your mom's different. I'm just saying, well, her mom's an alien from another planet. Derek and Deb, we're going. We can keep working, or and right here, this part right here makes me think this, who is supposed to be our main character, is kind of a bitch. Am I sorry for saying that? No, I am not. Thanks for the pizza. I mean, like, okay, so that weirdly wasn't a total disaster. Devin ditched me, so I'm clearly doing this whole thing by myself. What a shocker. Scully face, scully face. Right? And if you're gonna do something like this, noticing something, right? Here, here, here. Like, I don't get that. I don't get it. But you know what? Let's check out that Mary Sue. I am not Starfire. Exclusive first look to the book trailer to DC's I Am Not Starfire shows that parental intentions don't always end well. Okay, a couple weeks away. Eisner winning. Eisner winning. I got a problem with that too. I mean, because for anyone, does Eisner, if you're not a comic book artist, author, does Eisner really mean anything to you? It really doesn't for me. I didn't even realize something like this existed for the United States. But yeah. And so 17-year-old daughter of Mandy. Daughter is not like her mother. Starfire is gorgeous, tall, sparkly, and a hero. Mandy is not a sparkly superhero. Mandy has no powers. Is a kid who dyes her hair black and hates everyone. Her best friend, Lincoln. To Starfire, who is from another planet. Mandy seems like an alien. Like some. Okay, this doesn't make that much sense, right? Starfire, superhero, alien. I mean, like, I'm not saying like she can't have kids. So she has a kid. I don't get how her kid cannot be, you know, have powers. But hey, maybe it could be like some sort of invincible thing. It takes a couple years to kick in. Who knows, right? Um, it's possible, and it's possible Mandy is even more distant lately, ever since she walked out on her SATs. Yeah, which, yeah, her mom doesn't know. Everyone thinks Mandy needs to go to college and become whoever you become at college, but Mandy has other plans. Mandy's big plan is she's going to move to France and do whatever people do in France. Ooh, that just sounds like a bad idea. But then everything changes when she gets partnered with Claire for a school project. Mandy likes Claire, even if she denies it heartedly and intensely a lot. How do you become the person you're supposed to when you don't know? I'm ready to discuss your future education plan with you. Okay, I order Chinese. The future? I don't. Look, what are these? The college brochures. All the colleges? This is a very important decision for you to make. Perhaps you wish for the egg rolls. Sure, rolls. I don't have a top three. Do you have a top five or top six? I don't have that either. What do you want to study? I don't know. I'm still thinking. I am here. Daughter. No. Right. No, it's the knot. Something is wrong. Did I mention it's my birthday in 2 weeks? It is Mandy. Uh, perhaps. I'm not. Maybe this isn't for me. Yeah. No. What? You know what? That is not quite the defense that one could say it is. It's not for me. Because guess what? I don't know if you know this, but in Japan, they have a wide range of manga that is available for consumption for people in all sorts of genres. And this would fit within the shoujo genre. They have ones that are realistic, they have ones that are more fantasy, and this right here, it's like this suffers, I think, a lot from like American comic books in general, is that there is no build to anything. We look at this, right? This what's it? Poison Ivy thing, right? Is basically a retcon story of her origins, right? Now, usually for origins, have, and for villains, right? You look at Batman the Animated Series for a good example of how villains come to be, right? There's a person, maybe they have some sort of personality flaw, something, right? Or they're misguided, and there's a call to action, to say at the very least. And in this case, the call to action turns them, instead of a hero, into a villain. In this case, it's not a. Yeah. If you were to tell me that this version is the better Poison Ivy origin, I would have to say, no, I'm not a big fan of it, because here, I mean, like, Poison Ivy's main shtick is to protect the environment, right? There's nothing here that says she protects the environment, minus the thing at the beginning where she releases toxic chemicals near plants to slow down the construction of a nearby park, right? This park, right? And here's the thing. I don't know if the writers are aware. The writer is aware. What's her name? Kara. What's her name? Yeah, Cody. I don't know if Cody is aware, but if you put out some sort of toxic chemical that hurts people, right? That affects people, hurts them. It hurts other biological things too. So her dropping this vial of toxic chemical would probably kill this tree, or at least damage it, right? So we have that, and after that, it's done. It doesn't really get touched up upon. One of the better things I think this book had, one of the better moments, was when Pamela confronts or stands up to herself and goes to the proper authorities, because the stereotypical jock dude, this guy is being, like Brock Turner, you know, ish, or what I imagine a Brock Turner like person is like. And okay, this scene. Side note: this scene right here. Ugh, bothers me. Um, they're in the hallway. Pamela's powers does not include flight. Uh, what's her name? Alice, I think. Her she's a regular person. They look like they're floating. Like Alice looks like she's a good 6 inches off the ground, and Pamela looks like she's 2 inches off the ground. Uh, like if you put in a shading thing right here, yeah, it would look like they're off the ground. And yeah, so right here, this part I think is probably the one of the best handled part. I'm just gonna get rid of this so you can see it better if you want. Let's see. So this part here, right? This is a very common story that we hear in a lot of cases of women who report their sexual assault. There's a reason why there's ample evidence enough to show that women, a lot of rapes are underreported because the authority figures aren't, they don't do anything, right? Or they say they can't do anything, right? In this case, this sounds like if you compare this dialogue to the beats that you would see in news stories and studies and whatnot, it's like, yes, like even in Brock Turner, let's take Brock Turner's case, right? The dad said stuff like, he's a good athlete, this is going to affect his future, right? And in this case, we have something similar where it's like, yeah, I'll speak to him. He means no ill will. Mr. Connors is a good kid from a good family, does a lot for our community, and so on and so forth. And, slight mention of the park thing, right? And this part, I think, is handled pretty good. But, yeah. And then this whole, Dad was right, I can't trust anyone. And this is, I can't, like, the tone shift between the dramatic is not that great. Huh? It was hot in his room? 120? Although I have to say, this panel right here, don't like this page, good page. Though again, not exactly. Yeah, let's just move on. This does not look like a laboratory. I'm sorry. Beep beep beep. Cardiac arrest. Bzz. Hey, she's dead. Like, see, this is what I mean by having a good base of science. If you knew biology, that means you should know medicine. If you're gonna have people, fall into cardiac arrests and so on and so forth, constantly dying and all that stuff, you can look up this information easy. What happens, and if they keep doing this, then you'll be able to find out more. And this is what you need to do if you want to write comics, I would imagine. You need to know these details. And if we look around here, right, this does not look like we'll see later on that this does not look like a lab. It really doesn't, right? Like if this was a lab to study plants, right, or study medicine or that kind of stuff, it should look better than this. It really should. Let's see if I can find it. Like right here. This, hopefully it will load sooner rather than later. Okay, this right here. Full view of the lab, right? This does not look like a lab. It doesn't even look like a lab that they would have came up with in the 1950s when, comic books were first coming out. They have all sorts of electronic devices and vials and all that kind of stuff. That's what they need to put in the backgrounds, but we don't see that. All we see in here is basically a tank, right? We got right here, but this does not look like a lab. Certainly not a lab that you can continue doing whatever kind of research that they were doing, finding a cure for her mom, and then yeah, and like nothing about here, her in the specifics of the text and the pictures tells us that it would lead to her gaining powers, right? Nothing about it. Like this is supposed to be a big moment, and it just didn't feel that way, and now they're aiding and abetting, right? And then right here, this also bothered me. So she's at the hospital. It's 2 a.m., right? And she leaves. It's 3 a.m. I don't know, right? And then this, and here's the thing, and this isn't just this comic's problem. You see this a lot, but take this scene right here. In fact, let me go back and so you can see it better. Right? Take this scene right here. Right? We have Pamela. Let me see if I can do this a little bit better. Okay, so we have Pamela. Ugh. Why isn't it showing my? Okay, so we have Pamela. She's holding onto her mom's hand. If you notice the position of her hand relative to her mom's hand is on top of her mom's, right? And then 2 panels down, we see her mom squeezing her hand. If you think about the actions that it would take, her mom would either have to pull the hand out, put it on top of her hand, squeeze, right? Or she'd have to move her hand, and there's no way Pamela wouldn't know that. And this, like, there are at least, you can expand this a little bit more, right? Or if you wanted to keep this in general, you should show Pamela with her hand nearby her mom's because, she feels guilty, showing guilt because she did technically murder her dad and probably, the only chance that her mom has at a cure or something. You might be able to go with that angle, but through her talking and that sort of stuff, show her mom moving her hand towards her. But no, we don't have that. We have this Ivy and then cliffhanger. We don't know, right? And she only stayed at the hospital for like an hour, maybe not even an hour, like an hour, right? And then she goes home, has this moment with Alice, which I mean, it, this whole thing, and then we're back at the Bailey Park. So this feels like how Game of Thrones season 8 was written. They have the beats that they want to go to, and they know they have to get there, but they don't really care how, and that's how this reads. Sorry for the person who wrote this, but again, this is supposed to be part of the superhero genre. Superhero genres has certain beats that you have to follow, just like detective comics, like with the Private Eye, that sort of stuff has certain beats that they have to follow. Fantasy, certain tropes that they have to follow. You can always subvert the tropes, but this doesn't even do that. Like if this feels like a mash of different genres and not committing to any, right? And if this is supposed to be the whole retcon of Poison Ivy's background, if someone had no idea, right, about Poison Ivy and they read this, I would have a feeling that they would come to the same conclusion that I have, which is that this needs a lot more polish, right? I mean, mind you, it's like, oh, hey, it's 168 pages worth, 160 some pages worth of comics. Surely they did a good job. It's like, no, they didn't. The pacing is all over. I mean, if you ask me, can I recommend this for people, right, over all the other Poison Ivy comics, I would have to say no, right? the one thing that it has going for it is its unique art style, but art styles don't sell comic books, right? You can have the best looking comic book in the world with the greatest pictures, right? But if there's no good story behind it, then it's not gonna be, no one's, it's, you're, it's not, then it's not really a good comic. Like for example, let me see if I can go back. Oops. This, let's see, edit, transform. Let's put this back at 0, close. Right. So we have these comics, right? Let's just look at my library, right? A lot of these comics, right? Most of them have good pictures, right? There's not a whole lot here that I would want to read regularly, right? Complex Age, Demon Days from the X-Men, Demon Slayer, these are all good. Empowered, ugh, right? Fall of the Hulks, actually got that because I thought it looked interesting. But like Goddess, right? Great pictures. A lot of these have great pictures, but most of these I probably don't really want to read simply because, the story isn't all that good, right? Uh, it like for example, Masumi, right? This one looks like the pictures are great, but when you look into it, it's like, ugh, it really isn't all that great. And unfortunately, for this Poison Ivy Thorns, eh, it really suffers, right? Uh, I think that like no matter who's doing the writing, right? They need to have a solid grasp of science and putting in the details. So if you are going to do something sciencey sounding, it needs to sound believable, right? Like when Stan Lee first wrote his stories or his ideas, right? And you can find him saying this all the time because he usually did. He would say something along the lines of, you know, I never seen I wouldn't know a gamma ray next to a whatever ray, but I put it in there because it sounds great, right? And so that only takes you so far. Nowadays, when people can look up stuff in the internet a lot better, you have to be able to sell it better, which means with people's understanding of, you know, the world as a whole being increased, you got to put in that extra bit of detail, right? And that being said, it's not as if the writer, Cody, didn't have anything. Like, if she had to come up with something, you know, from the ground up, no past reference materials or anything like that, coming out with something like this makes sense because guess what? Back when comic books first came around, their stories were kind of like on this level, right? They weren't specifically too deep, right? They weren't overly complicated. They just had the bad guy, this and that, and so on and so forth, right? That being said, she doesn't exactly have a blank slate to work with. She has a lot of people who've done a lot of work. Poison Ivy has shown up in multiple different mediums, including the video game, Arkham and whatnot, and just multiple comics, multiple iterations, and all that sort of stuff. And that's a lot to go off of. She's been around for a long time. Here's the thing, though. A lot of those stories aren't exactly the best. You can go through all of Poison Ivy's, appearances, and there's probably, and this is me guessing, maybe 10%, 15, 20, depending on how much you like it, where you think it's like, yes, this is a great story, right? That centers on Poison Ivy. I don't think you see that here. The rest of it, the other 80 some percent, or like the majority of stories where it's not going to be good compared to it being good is never in favor, especially with characters. with long history, right? Poison Ivy is no exception to this. There's a lot of her past story that could use a lot of polishing. And do we see that? No, we don't. This feels like no, not feels. This does need more polishing. There's no doubt about that, I think. Well, I am going to stop my stream here. Hopefully you did enjoy this. And if you do, thank you for the one person who continues to watch. I don't know if that's actually true or if it's just me.